Now we've got a few things to unbolt. There's one bolt that holds the brake hose onto the strut. There's a pinch bolt. We'll do that a little bit later. There's bolt right here, nut, is for the stabilizer link off of the sway bar. That's going to take a special tool. And this ABS connection. The ABS line has kind of a grommet going through this mount. A little wrap right there. And you compress the plug just the right spot and it comes off. Right there is a little tab. You push it in and that unlocks. So we'll put that safely out of the way. This bolt holds the entire knuckle assembly onto the bottom of the strut. Time to remove it. If you give this a little spray of penetrating oil, that just might help the job go a little better. Here's the tool I made for this. This is a 15mm wrench that I cut and shortened so it fits right in there. 5mm hex. As I'm backing the stud out, I'm going to turn it the other way and just move the stabilizer link out of the way. Now the knuckle is kind of tight on that strut, and I think this is one of those times where a lot of us would be tempted to just start going at it with a hammer. Let me show you a different way to loosen that knuckle up. Find a piece of steel. This looks to be about 3/16 of an inch thick or so. There's a slot in the back of that knuckle. Put it in that slot, put the bolt in, turn the bolt in, and now the bolt is going to push on the opposite side of the knuckle and start to spread it. We don't want to get carried away. We want to loosen that knuckle up so it kind of slides off. Underneath the cowl, there are 3 bolts that hold the strut mount into the body. I'm going to loosen but not remove them because I have to make sure I don't drop the strut. And there's the strut. Now before I take the strut apart, I'm going to go ahead and mark the position of the spring, top and bottom, and the mount. Safety time. This spring has got a lot of energy stored inside that coil. Do not take this nut off, it's just going to go flying. So this is where a spring compressor is used. They mount on the spring, used in pairs. And they compress the spring and hold it while you do your disassembly. And I'll try to uniformly tighten that to keep everything centered. In this gap right here, this wiggle, That's what I'm looking for. That tells me the spring is far enough off of the mount that I can go ahead and remove the nut and the mount. 18 millimeter open end, 6 millimeter hex. There's the strut assembly, the spring still compressed, strut mount, dust boot, bump stop, and the nut. Now I transferred the marks to the new strut mount. I'm going to put the jounce rubber or the bump stop back in. So these parts have a couple different names. Put the dust boot on. There we go. That's the mark for the end of the bottom of the spring. Make sure everything is lined up and then start to remove the spring compressor. And the strut assembly is now reassembled, ready to install. Position the strut, start the bolts, just snug them up. And torque the strut mount bolts to the manufacturer's specifications. Now to help slide the strut back into the knuckle, I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on there. Maybe it'll help prevent some corrosion. It just took a little bit of coaxing and positioning to get the strut to slide into the knuckle. Once everything was lined up, it just slid right up in there. There is a stop on the back of the strut and a guide that goes into the slot on the back of the knuckle. Take out that piece of steel we used for a spreader. And we'll put the bolt in from the correct side. Please check the factory service manual for the correct torque specifications and any tightening procedures. Reinstall the stabilizer strut. I'm going to put the ABS cable back in its keepers. And plug it into the sensor. And finish by torquing the lug nuts to the manufacturer's specifications.